Everybody, I am Mr. Sawbladehead, and here with the local favorite,
Ram Nation 58, Mr. Bob Moffatt. Former co-host, I suppose. I'm going to get back on board and see if I can support you guys.
I hope so. Everybody's been wanting to know.
I know.
That's one of the questions. Matter of fact, I got to find out who asked the question, because I know everybody's always asking. Oh, here it is. From Kurt's Weld. This is from Instagram, and he wants to know, where did he go? Why did he leave? And did he do something wrong? Matter of fact, you did something wrong. That's the reason why Bob left, because you upset him, and he's really, and this is, no, I'm just kidding.
You know, Kurt, I want to do just a sit-down fireside chat. Make me a necktie out of this caution tape or something there. I want to answer that, but I want to do it just in a, heartfelt one-on-one type thing. It won't be that long, and it's brief, and there's nothing really wrong. It's just stuff happened, The stars weren't lined up, I say. I don't know. Is that another way to explain it? So, Curse Welds, I will get on that. Be a separate video, and it's going to probably be aired on this channel. It'll be aired on Let's Weld Something, which is another channel I'm involved in and based out of Chicago, Blue Demon Weld Material Sales. So I will answer that. Briefly, it's just I've stayed home to teach my class at the college, fulfill my requirements there. I've since retired from the college. I'm a free agent now. I got a story to tell, so I feel like I can get to work and do what I need to do, really. So where do we start? Are we going to go with Instagram first?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Instagram. This is the reason why I want to do this question. This is from Josh Sparks, 811. Now, when I was growing up, my dad's little shop, when I was a little kid, I didn't know that what you guys had called it was Texas TIG. I used to do the same thing with the take stick, an extra of the actual stick, knock all the flux off just because I thought that was kind of cool to hit when I was a little kid, to hit all the crunchy stuff off. And my dad would set me up stick welding. I just grabbed this thing and I was playing with for whatever reason, it was just playing with the two rods. Decades later, I found that that's what you guys call Texas TIG.
There's a lot of nicknames.
Yeah.
We just called it Texas TIG. Yeah, and we did a video on it. I don't remember what year it was, but man, we just got through welding on some nasty, rusty stuff. And by the way, I found out that was a poop tube that you kept in the back of your camper. That was what I was welding on. That's what had that stank about it. Thanks a lot, man cub. Anyway, the Texas TIG came about from filling up big gaps. And, you can do it with MIG and a piece of filler wire. You can do it with 2 stick electrodes. There's a number of different things you can do with it. And there's other nicknames for it too. And if you go back to that video and look at some of the comments, there's some cool nicknames in there about what that's actually called. But it's for filling up gap, man. That's what it's for. Now, a couple of different methods. You said you used it because you were playing around.
I was just playing around with it. And I actually...
By the way, did somebody have you bend knock all that fluxy stuff off over your neck when you bend it? That's kind of a newbie's joke.
That little crunchy stuff.
Well, they put 2 or 3 rods together and say, I bet you can't bend those over your neck. And when they do, all that stuff goes down there. Anyway, Texas TIG. There's multiple ways of doing this. Yes, you can fill a big old honking gap going uphill and just kind of build it in there and chase it back and forth and fill it up. You can run multiple stringer beads in something and eventually close it up. The whole thing you want to be careful of is what's it for. If it's for a critical code job, you probably shouldn't be doing it. You probably should be replacing that particular part that needs to be welded because you're setting yourself up. Non-critical stuff, you can fill up. If you can step across it, you can weld it. That's kind of the old adage in that. So Josh, I think I answered that online partially, and I hope that helps. And if you still have a question or if you still have some information, by all means, throw it out because we like to share all that good stuff. It's kind of fun. Challenge.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a challenge. We could do an online challenge and see how big a gap you could fill up.
It's kind of like dirty TIG.
I've done it filling up holes. Of course, I've also cheated and put a piece of brass on the bottom side of a hole and just continuously weld it up. There's all kinds of methods, and that's what this whole thing's all about: is sharing the info and the tricks that aren't written down anywhere. So let's go with one here right off the top. Will you do the 1 chip challenge? And that's from One Zim. Well, Yeah, I'll do it. I'm in. Let's go to the next question.
I thought you had a story where you guys did do a one chip challenge.
No.
You didn't?
No, I used to do some stuff back in the days before these hot peppers were even invented, but that's old Zim. Yeah, he's one of our crew members. I'll hook up with him.
All right, let's go to the Weld.com app. But this is at Sheepdog. Any pointers to help my horizontal stick welds?
Horizontal stick welds? Short, steady arc, run stringer beads. I mean, I've had a lot of people that'll create the groove. I nicknamed the horizontal weld the horrible zonal because everybody hates it. You know, it's like your signature out here in space. It really is. And so you got to run the straight stringer beads. I've seen people try to weave, and some of the old timers weave with the low hydrogen electrodes, not with the cellulose. The real old timers, where I come from, and I've had some interactions with my blokes down in Australia, we're always looking for those old time lacy welds, like on gas meter stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Great big old welds. And then you see one that's horizontal. It looks like it's stacked in and diagonals. It looks like they struck an arc, put it down here, and it struck an. Man, those guys are running the old time cellulose rods, the red rods, the original 6010s, 7010s. And it was cool. That cap is like blown on there. It really doesn't have a lot of reinforcement. The weld's pretty much already made. And we didn't, API was alive back in those days, but they're not high pressure welds per se. We got some big ass pressure on them. But
have you found that, talking about old timers, like I said, my dad had all this rod, obviously the rod that he's got, I went back to Ohio, and it's decades old. Have you found that some of that older rod welds different than maybe some of the newer technology rods, or is it?
Yeah, and cellulose rods in particular like moisture. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Whereas the low hydrogens obviously don't. But then again, we've been in this lab and soaked a low hydrogen rod for 24 hours and welded with it, and it welded okay, and it really didn't. We tested it, and it wasn't doing a whole lot in the way of bleeding hydrogen afterwards. It just welded funny color. The flux didn't act like it normally did. The cellulose rods, in the old days was the red rod. They actually welded a little bit better if they had some moisture around them. So you'd find some guys soaking them in a rag, or wrapping them in a rag, dipping them in water, and then welding with them. So we answered the Texas TIG.
Yep.
And then the next question was from Zarafa. I hope I pronounced that right. Xerapha. Easiest way to fill gap with stick welding. I think that kind of tied into the Texas TIG, although you don't have to use that other piece of filler wire. It doesn't have to be the Texas TIG, but multiple stringers, spot stitch welds. I've taken in the past, I've seen guys, and myself have done it too, have taken a gap and put a bunch of tacks about ½ inch apart. And so when you're welding it, you get up into that mass and it cools. You get up into that mass and it cools instead of just blowing out into a big hole.
It gives you that extra metal as the weld.
Filling big gap with stick, be patient. That's one thing. Keep it clean. Wire buff in between your starts and stops and get the slag out of it. We have, how do you pronounce that? Bobby Joggers. J-O-R-O. Oh, Bobby Joe Rogers. My bad. Hey, ding the old guy. I'm sorry. Bobby Joe Rogers. What's the importance of puddle control? Everything. I mean, if you're just slobbering and daubing, you're not controlling, you're not welding anything, really. In my opinion, that's my personal opinion. Puddle control is everything. Yep. Learn to control it by starting out doing oxyacetylene. Push that puddle around with the oxyacetylene, and you really appreciate what the weld's doing. You'll be able to see it, read it, manipulate it, and then when you get to other welding processes, I don't care if it's MIG or stick or TIG, you're already tuned in to watching the puddle. Very important to get proper fusion and into both pieces. I mean, puddle control is everything, isn't it? I
remember my dad show me stuff, and it was just kind of like, it was just to watch that puddle, and as you're if you were pulling, and you would just watch this to make sure you're not going too fast. It's almost kind of like Pac-Man. You want that just right at that consistent distance. You didn't want too far. You obviously didn't want it too close. So that was before I even kind of really knew what I was doing. I was just looking at the arc and looking at that little puddle and that little dot and make sure it was just following me just consistently. And
it's actually look behind your source, Your stick welding, you don't want to look right at the arc. You manipulate the rod. You want to watch that puddle behind the rod. And that's what's going on. So we have Jacob Morgan is asking some mirror welding shots. Can you do some mirror welding shots with 7018? You want to go after that one?
I haven't done. I've done that just out of just playing around. My dad would, like I said, my dad's like it's like you, unbelievably talented, numerous certifications, and he would talk to me about stories about him, building choppers and do all this stuff, and he had to get under the Boilermakers and getting underneath the stuff. And I was like, well, how do you get all that stuff? And he would talk about bending rod and doing that, and he was talking about mirrors, and he would actually show me doing it with the mirror, and it's all about. And before you even strike that arc, you have to run passes because everything what you would normally want to do is opposite. So it messes with your mind. So you really have to play around with that. So obviously, getting into positions where you just have to be comfortable. That's always the name of the game. But then also have to practice doing everything is what you're going to the left or right is the total opposite. So it throws you off. And then once you get that and get that rhythm going, and it's
I did my last mirror weld, I think, was up in Schenectady, New York. We put in a boiler. We pre-built the guts of the boiler, which was a helical coil. It was in an insulation plant. We went up and cut the convection box away from the coil, pulled the coil out, put a new coil in, put a new convection box in, and then I had to make that mirroring weld up in the top. It rained all day. My butt was wet, and I was sitting on a pallet, I think. I shocked the crap out of myself. I don't know how many times getting up. It ain't funny. Get you laughing out of the way. Man, I'm telling you, it was a mirror weld because I'm sitting up there and I had to reach back behind and there's nothing. And you're right. Everything you do is opposite in the mirror. So you gotta get in there and kind of practice that first. That's a good question there, Jacob Morgan 097. Really, if you read that question that he sent in, it's like, or maybe it's the way it was interpreted and written for us. Can you do some mirror welding shots with 7018? I'd rather do shots than mirror welding. What?
You want to do shots.
Yeah. Do some shots for you, Jackie. Oh, man. Is there any procedure for open root flux core? Well, you betcha there is. Maxwell Peckham. Yeah, there's procedures for open root flux core. You got to be careful. It's one of those things you can drip out and leave a bunch on the back side. Open root, now that's different from the backing pad, on a procedure. You can either create the lack of fusion, or you can create a bunch of hangy down things on the backside. So you got to be careful.
And what kind of industry you would actually even use that for?
Actually, believe it or not, you can do it with piping. You can do it in piping trades. Generally, we'd do something like that on heavy wall, Schedule 80 and above, most generally. Large diameter, you can run the root on Schedule 40s and stuff. And then the critical structural stuff, there'll be some open roots for that. Heavy structural, some heavier piping. Flux core is all about the depositions, the rate. I mean, you're pouring it in there you pour it in there like butter. You can make some incredibly large welds in one pass if you're doing it correctly.
Now, would that be the main advantage of doing that and that type of process is only because you just want to get a bunch of weld in one pass?
Yeah, in my experience, it was with more of the structural, and my rollout or my piping was in the rollout, like prefab. I have used it in position quite a bit, but not in an open root. We usually did a TIG root and maybe a gas metal arc welding fill. And if it was heavy, we'd do a couple of stringer beads or another fill pass and then stringer beads for a cap.
Okay.
But open root on any of that kind of stuff is just, it's all about the fit up. You can't go in. You're not going to set your machine hot in the same place all day, every day, because you can't. not like you can whip out of it like a stick. You're not going to create a keyhole, whip out of it, and cool it off. You're running continuous. About the only thing you can do is pull it back to decrease your amperage or weave wide when you're getting in trouble in the root. Unless somebody knows different, again, please share. So, next one is, do you have any tips on running 1/16 dual shield in the 3G position? Well, the 3G would be what? The vertical up and down. And this is from Still Neil with an underscore and a couple of periods on each side there. I've never seen that. That's cool. So, 1/16 dual shield 3G. Hope you got enough material thickness to run it, because 1/16 is a hog wire, really. It might seem small, but you're running high volts, high amps on that puppy. 045, you can run 28, 29 volts. 1/16 dual shield, that's a lot of volts. You got to have a good machine to run that. Wire feed speed. I got a question. Does your wire feed speed go up or down when you get to a larger diameter? So we're running 035 wire and we switch to 045. If we want to run about the same amps, does it go up or down?
Oops. If you're running hot and then
yeah, well, you're putting down a lot of material when you're on a 1/16, so you better have some large material that you're working with, not necessarily steel, but stainless. And
well, if it's going to be that hot, I would say we have to crank it up in order for that
3G. If it's a good dual shield, there's some wires, you just point it in the pool, point it on the leading edge of the pool, do not flinch, and it'll make a really nice weld. As soon as you start stepping out of it, if you get nervous and step out of it, it makes a mess, and then you got to get to know your grinder again. Y'all buddy up again. All right, next one is from Cold Roller 6.7. Where do I know that one from? Cold Roller. We got, do you scratch start a rig welding series in all positions? Well, I'm confused.
Yeah.
A rig welder, if you're just running off an engine drive, you're touch starting it all the time anyway, unless you got, the older ones, I've always just done a touch start with them. Like a SA200 or any of the other 300s, whatever. You're hooking up a dry rig to your leads. You put your ground clamp onto your power cable adapter, and you use your electrode holder as a ground. The machine doesn't know the difference. You just switched it to straight polarity. That's how we've always done ours. So, cold roller. I hope I answered that. I didn't know if there's anything other than scratch start or touch start. We got one here.
El
Hombre Indivisible.
Okay.
So I picked that one up quick, didn't I?
Yeah, I couldn't even read it. All right. This one's good. Now, can you do a 6G, 610, 7018 monster coupon test upside down, blindfolded, one hand behind rack, and a keyboard inspector?
Hell yeah, I used to do that all day, every day. 80 feet in the air with one eye, you bet.
While eating a snack.
Who is this guy? I want to go visit him. That's the one I'm going to do shots with and do this other one up here. He must have listened to me one time when I said, "Who's your camera guy?" Because there was people commenting on every little thing. And I said, we're going to go up 80 feet and you're going to hang me upside down and weld with one eye open, because this is the most impossible thing. Hey, if it's 6G, I'm going to pick this apart now. If it's 6G and you turn it upside down, what is it? Well, it's still 6G, isn't it? Blindfolded? I look like I weld them blindfolded anyway. One hand? No. And your keyboard inspector in your ear the whole time. Which one? We got a bunch of them. Oh, it's all good. That's funny right there. I don't care who you are. That's funny. Let's go over to the TikTok platform. Can you give some advice on feeding the wire? Just some old dude. You notice I write my own questions in here. Huh? Feeding the wire. Now, we can only assume that is the TIG process, right?
Yep.
We were just talking about this to somebody yesterday. Oh, the group that we taught that came through. There's so many different ways of feeding wire. Hand me that piece of 1/16 right there, G. Thank you. There's so many different ways of feeding the wire. Traditionally, we've got people that'll do this. You can roll it in your fingers to get it out there. There's so many things. You can be like Rush Kane and do this. I stood right beside him over here across the wall one day several years back and did collaboration. He was doing this cane grip thing. I said, man, you need to market that. That is like so cool. I watched him do 3 welds on aluminum and not one differed in ripple pattern. And he's feeding it from the side. I mean, he's just a machine, and that's comfortable for him. I've used it a lot. You know, it's a good method. You're gripping it here, pushing it down, gripping it here, pushing it down. I didn't even know what to call it. Just brush cane, you know.
Ever use the pencils?
The what?
I call them the mechanical pencils.
I have one over here somewhere. I had it out yesterday.
Yeah.
Let me go grab this thing. Keep going though. Yeah. Keep going. No, keep rolling because it's right over here. I can smell it from here. Those things are pretty cool, and there's a couple of different types of them. One of them is a gripper. It just comes up and it kind of grips the wire, pinches it like that, and it holds it at an angle. And I've had that one. I've had both of them since like the mid 80s. This one was patent pending from England or something, and I still use it for I don't like getting my digits up in some corner somewhere, weird angle, and pushing the wire up in there. And that one's good for that. But then the other one is, it's been redesigned as the Dabby pin. And it's one that has the double O-ring in it. I bought one of these a long time ago. 1986, I think it was, from a friend of mine that repaired regulators, had a welding supply store. And I bought it because I thought, oh yeah, I'll get that and then I can back feed. I can set that right down in the pipe bevel, you know, and I can back feed. Bull crap. I look like a monkey molesting a football, man. It's so bad. You move a little bit up here and it creates a lot of movement down, you know what I'm saying?
Huh.
Well, I mean, think about it. Here's a dot right there. I'm trying to hold it right over the dot. So I can do that. But like a full stick of, you know, if I'm trying to do that plus feed the wire, and you see people that are impeccably good at it, like Travis Field and other guys. I mean, they're just a machine. I worked with a guy that he could take and hold on the end of a full length of filler wire and feed it through a piece of 12-inch pipe, and he'd be holding on to it up here and just looking down at the bottom. And I mean, perfectly still. There's no way I can do that. Still can't. So I got this thing and I was thinking, yeah, I'll get some of that thing going. And it works. It's cool, but it doesn't work for everything. It's not grabbing onto this piece, that's for sure. Oh, there it is. So just by keeping your hand the same, you can roll this out as you need it. You know, again, I bought it thinking I could do something with it. It didn't work out for me. But they're cool. Weld Materials sells these. Amazon, there's numerous people. It's been redesigned as a cool functional item. Some people say this is cheating. I don't consider this cheating. You know, if this is cheating, why do we have cold wire feeders for TIG? That feed out wires. It's like MIG wire and it's sitting out here in front, and man, you make robotic welds with it. Is that cheating? Come on, man, it's just welding. Gee whiz. You're going to say that somebody that uses one of these that's handicapped or, you know, has no mobility or maybe some appendages missing, you're going to call them a cheater? Watch what you say, you know. Anyway, there's multiple methods of feeding it, and it's whatever you're comfortable with. Everybody welds different. Everybody's unique. You know, I learned off little kids who are just starting out. I'm teaching them. I see something, I'm going, shit, I can do that. That's cool, you know. And you learn from everybody. So, advice on feeding wire: get comfortable, be consistent, be smooth. Pay attention to what's going on. If you make a mistake, don't wait till you made the entire weld to make an adjustment. Stop and get yourself comfortable and redo it. Man, I spent a lot of time on that question. That was a good one. Huh? All right, here we go. Let's do the next one there.
Right there. Any advice on how to keep the cap more consistent with the TIG?
Hey, Junie OR
Hey, Junior.
or Zero R or something.
Hey, Junior.
Yeah.
TikTok.
All right, TikTok. Keep the cap more consistent with TIG. Well, yeah. Don't try to do too much. I see people trying to carry way too much material. Way too much material. And for width, don't keep it clean. That's the number one thing. I see a lot of people trying to put caps on TIG piping or TIG. They get up to that spot and they They don't clean near enough. It needs to be super clean. Here's one thing I've seen and learned. You can take your wraparound or something and put soapstone put a couple of guidelines across with pencil. I don't believe your TIG root wants to go outside of your pencil marks. Something, a little bit of reaction with it. Kind of a heavy graphite in there, and that the metal doesn't want to wash out beyond that. Put some scribe marks in there where you're only going out to that point. You watch the edge of the pool, and it goes right out to that point. Another thing that I can say about caps is let the material cool down to room temperature or thereabout. Don't try to weld it too hot. Keep it cool and be cool and be smooth, you know. Next one is, were you a Votech teacher in the Winfield, Kansas area? Sober Life of Lang.
Sober Life of Lang.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Oh, Sober Life of Lang. Is that a song? Is that a band? What is it? I'm going to find out because the person's around my area here. Yes and no. Technically, Cali County Community College and Votech, that is the title. Yes, I was. I was in Arkansas City, Kansas, Ark City. Again, I just retired after 26 years of loyal service to that institution. Votech teacher, yes, I was. So, no hiding that.
Maybe you owe money.
I might.
Yeah.
I think I paid all my. I owe the guy. I got a damn parking ticket in St. Pete last night. You believe that? Golly.
Do we need to start a GoFundMe campaign for your parking tickets?
We've got to have a retirement fund and a GoFund my parking ticket fund, and man, this is getting brutal. Can you do a 60-10 route on a 5/32 gap? I wouldn't do it downhill. I'd do it uphill. 5/32 is pretty honky. That's not bad, really. The heavier the wall, the better. That's from Mooseman Lou 50. See if you say it fast, it comes out better. Mooseman LU50. Mooseman Lou 50, 5/32 gap. What is 5/32? Is that more or less than 3/16? Camera guy? Okay. Is 5/32 more or less than 3/16? You're right. It's 1/30. He didn't even answer, did he? Saving his butt.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
It's 1/32 less than. It's a pretty good gap. It's 32nd over an eighth. And yes, you can. You bet. The heavier the material helps. I wouldn't want to do it on no thin wall stuff, but yeah, it's doable. Certainly doable.
That's when you get that Texas TIG out.
Here, 60-10 route. I was going to say I'd do those all day long with TIG. 60-10, yeah, dang sure can. Stitch. Maybe I'd stitch and stop. I don't like doing them downhill, I can tell you that right now. I don't like doing the big gaps downhill. I'd rather fit downhill tight, stick the rod in there, bend it, and grab for the coffee cup while you're running it, you know? Any chance we can see some semi-automatic sub-arc? Well, sub-arc is semi-automatic. Actually, some sub-arc is automatic. Can you read that name there on that platform, TikTok?
It's was it
Dodo, something Gaming YT?
Is it? Yeah, Dodo Gaming YT.
We don't have sub-arc equipment here. We have the power. We have 483 phase, do we not? We do. We don't have that equipment here. We do have the footprint, although we need to do some rearranging and whatnot. I never had it at the college that I was at because we didn't have the footprint and we didn't have the power, but it's one of those processes that's easily taught in-house. If you go to work for an employer that uses sub-arc, you can easily train on it after you've been running like wire feeds and flux cores and stuff like that. It's just all about travel speeds and amperages and what you can get away with. Jason Becker had one over here at Valencia. We did some filming over there on that machine. We don't have it. That's not to say we won't have it in the future, but we just don't have it right now.
What kind of industry or product would that be used for?
Have you seen like propane tanks? It's that big dome head on the end and then the tube and everything. That weld is like wide, but it's super smooth and perfect. That's a sub-arc weld. That's where you see that. It's rolling, it's continuous controlled wire or rolling speed, whatnot. It's high amperage. Your arc is submerged in a blanket of flux.
Yep.
Everybody, a lot of people thinks that it's underwater type stuff, but it's like welding. Like this is your wire, and before you start welding it, granulated flux is around here. So your flux can do a lot of things: deoxidizers, alloying elements, and all kinds of there's a little chemistry going on there, you know. And large diameter wire, a lot of deposition, fast deposition rates, but again, super smooth welds. Some of these old timers, man, they're welding on 1/4 inch thick plates, and they can get it where it's real close to being full pin, maybe even full pin. Back grind a little bit, put a weld in there, and boom, you're full pin all the way. So,
next we're going to the Weld.com app.
The app. I'm sure somebody on there runs subarc all the time, and that's another thing about the app. You know, sharing that info and those experiences, that's where you're going to find it. 532. Yeah, every time I see that, I cringe. You know, that's a beast. I hope that answered that. Again, you know, somebody that does subarc, comment if you're a member of the app thing. Please, you need to get on there anyway. So you need to download the app and get on there. You can share some experiences and some advice. We certainly appreciate it. Share the knowledge and everything. Share the love. We're going to WhatsApp. Any pointers to help with horizontal stick welds? Did you read that one earlier?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You were jumping around there. So sheepdog been taken care of. Kind of, sort of. So again, if somebody's just jumping onto this, again, horizontal stick welds, kind of everybody's least favorite. I'm not a proponent of weaving in the horizontal. I might use a slight J to stack some material in there, but short, steady arc, watch the weld pool. You're in control. You make the weld pool do what you want it to do. As my good friend Hamar Aguilo used to say, no, I'm in control. I'll make it do what I want to do. I miss that old.
So you don't want any isolation whatsoever. It's just a straight vertical.
Well, it depends on stick welding. It depends on what electrode you use, because obviously some of them are going to lay down, you know, like a 70-18, 80-18, 90-18, and the nickel stuff. If you're trying to stack a whole bunch with the low hydrogen rods, I would not do a lot of motion. It's just a straight stringer bead. Smoother the better. Less chance of trapping slag or doing anything weird. Undercut. Your top part of your weld, top part of your arc is wanting to undercut and horizontal. That's a problem. Tips of welding stainless steel butt welds. Andrea Cole, 74800. That looks like Oklahoma to me. That's the Oklahoma zip code. Stainless steel butt welds. Yeah. Didn't specify plate or pipe or what type of material.
You guys were running some.
May have to back purge. I just got attacked by a piece of filler wire.
You got the grip in the other day, didn't you?
There was a piece of pipe over here a minute ago. We don't want to pull that out because that is an experiment for an individual. But anything stainless steel butt welds, either beveled, open root, if it's thin enough that you can melt the material, you're going to have to, the material is going to oxidize on the back side. If it's open root, you're going to be back purging. If it's thin material and you're hot enough to do a melt back there, you're going to have to purge. So that's kind of a tough one to answer. I don't know what type of butt weld you're doing, but right off the bat, I would say, make sure that you're purging. If you're in piping or plate that's beveled, don't be scared of the keyhole. Once it starts, just put some wire in it, dab some wire in it, and practice so that you know the timing and what's going to happen. I encourage you to do that. When you get the hang of it, man, you can put them in there. They look like a wedding band. They're so smooth. And so there's so many people that are damn good at it because they do it a lot. I did a fair amount of it, but I didn't do it enough where I felt like I was really good. So practice. learn from others and watch some people that have been doing it a while. There's definitely some tricks to it. Gap is not necessarily the whole ticket. Stainless steel moves around quite a bit. It shrinks. So your tack placement, your heat, how much you're trying to carry and all that matters a bunch. Where we at? Tips on 7018 vertical up versus stringer, and that is Logan Moss 24.
That looks good.
Stringer versus weave. There's a good controversy for you. Stringer versus weave. At what point do we continue to weave a 7018? And some people just absolutely go ballistic if you weave at all. I can't believe that myself. I mean, I grew up in the era of, let me tell you a little bit about my background. You guys want to challenge me? Be careful. You know, I was one of those that took classes on metallurgy and physics and stuff. We tore stuff up. Mm-hmm. We recorded the numbers. I know what's stronger and what's weaker, and a stringer bead is not necessarily stronger than a weave, and I'll argue that all day long. And people get a hold of this and they're like a bulldog because they heard it. They heard it somewhere. Oh, okay. Well, you heard it from your boss or somebody, and now it's stronger. Okay, go with it. Why don't you run the formula for heat input? Go pull up the formula for heat input before you contact me and want to argue. I know what it is. Gee whiz, it's the amount of time that you spend on a weld. You go back into it with multiple stringers. Are you pouring more heat into that? If I do a weave and I'm done, I'm going to the house, man. I'm drinking beer. You guys are still out there doing stringer beads. Which one's stronger? Well, the tips on that is kind of know where you're at, know what your limits are, but the first thing you need to pay attention to is what's required from your employer. What's the WPS say? Mm-hmm. That's the whole deal. I mean, you might be a golden arm at doing stringer beads and make them all look like a machine ran them in there, but that's not what your employer wants. WPS says you got to weave it, or vice versa. So you need to know how to read those and pay attention to those. And then after that, the tips on vertical up. Keep a short, steady arc. Pay attention to your amperage. Watch the weld pool down below. I always look at the weld pool below the rod, and I watch the edges. I never weave outside of a groove. I do not like weaving outside of a groove. I like watching the red weld metal come around and wash that out, and I go across. Same way. It's just, and I don't like going up in big vertical or big diagonal steps. I like going in there and just kind of smoothly going back and forth. Makes the slag come to the top in the middle, less chance of trapping anything. I do have one other tip. And it's a subtle thing. But if you have ever been on some material where it tends to undercut on a vertical weave, when you come to one side and you're pausing and waiting for that weld metal to come around, if you can do just a very slight tuck, just down, come back over. And this is with a short arc too. Come back over, do the same thing. I mean, it's so subtle. But I've won a lot of contests doing that just by the consistency of the bead and no undercut. And some metals, they look clean and you're welding along, minding your own business. Yep. It's like they just kind of fall out and they're prone to undercut. That little technique right there, I can't believe I just shared that with the world. Golly. That right there may make or break a welder or a contest or something. Short, steady arc. That's the whole thing about 7018. I like to point mine slightly downhill. There's a lot of people that say you can't run 7018 unless you're pointing it slightly uphill. Come at me. We'll play. We'll have a contest. I mean, that's just me. I like to do it because I like the way it runs. I like the way it directs itself into the parent metal. That's just it. And the next question was from Ryan BJ16. It says, can you weave a 7018 rod or will you trap slag? You can weave it, but there are limits. Pay attention to what the text says. It says 2 or 3 times the outside diameter, or I'd say the core wire of the rod. So if you have an 1/8 inch 7018, how much can you weave it? I don't like weaving it more than, moving it. What is that, 3/8? Or that's quite a bit because of 3/8. You're moving at 3/8. You're welding way bigger than 3/8. That's what I'm trying to say. Again, short, steady arc. I wouldn't be lifting up. I got a funny story about that, the motion that you use. Nobody's asking anything about motion and technique, but when I was coming up, the textbook, and I still get a kick out of the text. Some of these textbooks are written. They'll give you all these motions, you know, the figure 8 and all this stuff. And they'll give you this motions like this big old U and everything. That one's wrong, man. Stay away from that one. It's actually just the opposite and crunch it down. It's a subtle upside down eyebrow type. You know, that's all it is. I get a kick out of the one that says it's a small rectangle and then a big one and then a small one. I don't know which one I'm on. You know, I get all dyslexic and I got ADD under the hood and everything else, and I forget which one I'm on. But you know what? Here's the deal. You run all those different motions and you go by and you try to guess which one's which. They all look the same. I mean, the ripple pattern hardly matters at all. The thing about 7018 is don't use a lot of big steps. You never want to whip out and try to come back to it and all that. Just stringer beads or short steady arc when you're doing any of those filling techniques there with the 7018 rod. Ryan BJ16, that was for you. What am I doing for Halloween? Any cool builds? Vez. Halloween. Vez. Who's Vez? Who's that? What? Vez. Let's see. You'd probably do a geodesic fire pit thing for a couple $1,000. $2,000.
That's good.
Build one for $2,000. What are we going to put in it? Cats and scary figures, and yeah, we could do some cool builds maybe. Braid some wires and make something. We got to do something functional and cool for Halloween. When is Halloween?
October 31st.
Does it fall on the 31st? I mean,
it falls on
everybody celebrates it on
Saturday or Monday, actually.
Okay.
I got a kid. I know it's the last day of the month. I always forget though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see what we can do to do a build of sorts.
My wife wants me to do this elaborate big old thing in the yard, and I'm not going to have time for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out images. It could be, the cat, it could be the moon, it could be Little Witch. They're going to be like this big, and I'm going to stick them in the yard. I'm going to put a light
silhouette
it on my
cast it.
Then that's going to be the Halloween decorations. Real simple.
I'm thinking about taking the bar and the chain off my steel chainsaw. Start it up and just chase people around. I don't know what's on it. Of course, I might get shot doing that. You never know. Here's one from Greg Richardson. Says, "How old are you?" Well, that's some more of your business. I feel. Put it this way, Gregor. Some days I feel like I'm gonna get up and kick butt and take names, and before I get out of bed, I'm done. My butt's kicked, I feel, some days I feel old, some days I feel 64. How about that for an answer? Every bit of it. Born 1958.
Do the math.
Been welding since 1974. Learn something every day. Still learning. That's the only reason I keep going. Still learn something, Here's one from old Welding Okie. Same dude that kind of developed these old, have you worn these? There's a good ad for him. Oh, Game Changers. You will not feel too much heat coming through that finger over there.
Oh yeah,
set that down on hot metal. You won't feel it.
It's actually really comfortable.
Damn, it's not fine glove right there called Game Changers through Blue Demon.
They're not bulky at all.
And Garrett helped develop that product there and get it to market and everything. He's a hell of a hand on the TIG wires too, and from what I hear, he has a hard time meeting up, even though he's 100-something miles away. We're having a hard time meeting up. Am I going to Fab Tech? I guess I will if I'm going to meet you, because can't get her done in Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm going to Fab Tech, and I'll be working multiple booths and whatnot, working the floor. I guess I'm doing some demos at Everlast, working with Edge Welding Supply, working with Blue Demon, working with Weld.com, and working with Let's Weld Something. God dang.
So why don't they just call it Bob Tech?
You don't want to do that.
Why not?
I don't want to do that. That's not cool. That is not cool. Let's go on to the next question quickly, please. What do you think the coolest welding job out there? Wonder Woman Welds. Man, I said that quick. I couldn't do it again that fast. Wonder Woman Welds. The coolest welding job out there. The one that satisfies you and the one that you are passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
That's my answer.
Yep.
I don't care if you go to work in a dress shirt and tie and laser weld all day long on jewelry or aircraft or whatever, or you go to work and you weld on poop tubes for Weld.com and Texas TIG and do all that rusty nasty. It's the one that you have passion about, the one that you don't think is a job, the one that that's what you want to do and your heart's into it. That's the coolest welding job out there. That's the one right there. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you build badass drum sets and all that stuff. I mean, that didn't feel like a job when you were building that, did it?
No, and actually,
that's freaking cool.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get other jobs on top of that.
Yep.
Yeah, those are the cool jobs. Mm-hmm. The ones that you gotta laboriously pain through, and you know it's going to be hard, and you know it's not going to be rewarding, and you just drudge through those. Those are the ones you hang your head over. And those are not cool, I don't think.
Nope.
So my answer would be the ones you're passionate about.
Yep.
I mean, I could sit down and repair something for somebody and ask, what do I owe you? You don't owe me anything, you know. I'll either get you on the next one or the smile on your face thinking that I couldn't repair it. That's enough for me. I don't need anything really. Actually, I need cash. I need a tour bus and an Exxon card. That's what I need.
Bob Tech's not going to pay for itself.
I know it, man. I got to move my tools around, and I need somebody to pimp my truck. That's what I need.
That sounds like a
got
project.
The old 12 Dodge Cummins with 300,000 miles on it. She runs, but she's a little loose, you know.
So we got a lot of room in here. We could definitely make that into a project.
Yeah. Well, I see if somebody pimp it out, I'd rep for them. They could wrap it. They could do whatever they wanted to with it. It was white. Now it's kind of a rust color. Got a little patina on it. But I still drive it. Yeah. And I'd drive it all over the country if I could. I used to make it from where I was there in northern Oklahoma, southern Kansas, right smack in the center from I-35 all the way out to Vegas in one shot. One shot. I mean, one drive, not staying overnight. I'd make it to my parents' house in South Texas in one tank of fuel. 700 plus miles. That's about how much range.
Because you're going downhill.
No. Nah. It's because I had just better fuel back in those days. But the truck still runs. I just need it to, I still need it. It's just
thinking of bring back, good fuel and everything else. So obviously with all the new inverters and the new technology, not taking away, what's out there now, back old school, what was your preferred machine back in the 70s? See
that blue machine over there on the wall, halfway up the wall on that storage rack?
Synchrowave?
That is a Miller ABP 330. They called them a round top, Gold Star. That's a transformer. That's a damn fine power source for stick and TIG. It ran AC. I had a female student that could weld 035 aluminum in a fillet weld and not melt through the backside. That's like that copper sheet right there in front of you. I mean, she was so good at that. It had a lot of control for some reason. Just a super smooth machine. I ran in the field. I liked the Lincoln engine drives, SAs. In the shop, I liked those. I liked Syncrowaves. I liked the Miller always had superior wire feed. I learned on a CP200. If anybody out there knows what that is. CP's third letter in the alphabet, 3-phase CP, and then 200 amp. That was the one where you crank the old dial. You're moving a coil past a coil to change voltage.
Yep.
And it had the analog meters, and you'd set it on the scale over here as you're cranking it. You got a scale that comes up. You set it at about 24, but that's not what you were welding at. That's open circuit voltage, and you had that drop to it. These days, when you mention inverters, they don't drop much at all. And it says you're set it at 17.8. That's damn close to what you're going to get because of the solid state electronics. It's taking that input power, doing its thing with it, chopping it into high frequency, rectifying it, spitting it out, and it's not going to deviate very much at all. I can tell you this, back in the old days when I'd go to work, if I went to work early in the morning before a lot of people got up, my machine ran a little crispy. It was all there. But later in the day, when everybody got up and you know, you're doing your hair dryer and I was making coffee and the microwaves running and all that, the power draw on the grid was you weren't getting that full output, so you had to turn your machine up a little bit. These days you don't do it. They have power compensation factor within a certain amount, and it's there all the time. So it's, you know, it's fascinating what's changed over the years. I've seen a lot of changes, and a lot of it has to do with the machines, not necessarily materials. Granted, there's advancements in technology, but the majority of all the changes is driven around the inverter technology. What we do with solid state electronics, what we do with the filler metal and manipulate the arc. It's all about speed and efficiency, and it needs to be. But so that's kind of what we're seeing. We look forward to more Q&As there, although I talk too damn much, don't I?
Well, I've been wanting to talk to you. Like I said, when I first got to Weld.com, you were here, and the next thing you know, like, where'd Bob go? Bob was mad at me or something.
We met over at the music store. That was cool.
Yep.
I still want to go over there and just walk around that place. That was fascinating. I was sending pictures to my buddy. All my buddies that play instruments, I'd walk over along the wall and shoot a whole wall of guitars or a whole wall of saxophones or something. That was fascinating. And then your drum set was sitting in there, and that was the highlight of the whole damn room. That was not a small room.
No.
That was kind of cool. And then, we just kind of parted there and here back. I mean, I've been back and forth so many times to make your head spin. I want to come back down and do some more collaborations. I want to do some builds with some folks. I think Vez wants to learn how to TIG weld on her own. And she can run TIG silicon bronze on a build for herself for Halloween. So somebody's going to have to get her some PPE and get her out here in the shop. You know? Let's do it.
All right.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate you. Check out the app, Weld.com. It's going to be a sharing type thing. We've never been, that has been the whole philosophy. Take care of those that care and share the knowledge. It helps a bunch.
Shares job opportunities as well too.
Yeah. Look into those investments for retirement funds for old folks. And get me a nursing home down here somewhere.
There's plenty.
All right. Thanks a lot. We appreciate you watching.